Well, hello everyone. Happy New Year. We are recording this on the final day of 2021. Maybe for a few of you, it's been a good year. For many more, it's been a bad year. For a lot of us, it's been an ugly year. But we want to end the year on a high note. I'm really excited to have my friend Nick Furman and his father, Dave Furman, who wins the Outfit of the Day award. Welcome, Nick. Welcome, Dave, all the way from good old Pennsylvania.
Thanks.
Great to have you guys with me today. All three of us share a love for the Western genre. We share a particular love for one of the most iconic Western films of all time. I think it's safe to say The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And so on this last day of 2021, we are celebrating the 55th anniversary of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And so we're just going to dive into a conversation here. We'll do our best to keep our conversation less than the 3-hour runtime of this movie, but we're pretty excited to do this. And so those of you who aren't familiar with this movie, maybe some of our younger listeners, this goes back to the mid-'60s, and it's one of 3 movies known as the Dollars Trilogy, or the Man with No Name trilogy. Italian films directed by iconic director Sergio Leone, but A Fistful of Dollars came out first, and then For a Few Dollars More was released, I believe, the following year, and then the third and final one, the best of the 3 in my estimation, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, released in Italy in 1966 and internationally in 1967. So we figure we got both years covered because we're recording this in 2021, but it will be released to you listening in 2022. So whichever way you slice it, happy 55th anniversary, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And so I want to pass it over to you, Nick and Dave. I want to just open up a conversation in general to start about the Western genre, and then we'll zoom into this film and we'll talk about our love for it. But maybe you guys can just have a nostalgic moment, a father-son walk down memory lane conversation about the Western genre and your love and the influence of it.
Yeah. You want me to start?
Maybe I should start.
Yeah, you start, man.
Okay, so for me, it didn't really start in the movie theater. Started on TV.
Okay.
Yeah, so think about some shows in the 50s and 60s. Probably started in the 50s. So one of the ones I remember was Gunsmoke.
Oh, yeah.
That was my dad's show. We used to watch the show all the time. So, if my dad wanted to watch it, we watched it.
Right.
So Matt Dillon, he was a good guy. What was another one? The Rifleman.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Rifleman with Lucas McCain.
Chuck Connors. There you go.
Chuck Connors. That was another show we watched. Death Valley Days. That's even older.
Wow, it's taking us back here.
Yeah, so those were different stories too, the Death Valley Days. I'm trying to think of what another one was. I said Gunsmoke, Death Valley Days, The Rifleman. Those were kind of the big ones. There were like tons of shows. Like the Virginian, Chaparral Gang or whatever that show, the High Chaparral. There were all these shows. So I started out with those shows. And then a couple of the movies that I saw prior to The Good and the Bad and the Ugly, How the West Was Won was one of them. What's the one with John Wayne? The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
Yeah, that's a great one.
So that was a really good one. And one of my favorites, Magnificent Seven.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I saw all those, I think, before any of the spaghetti westerns, and I love those, particularly like the first scene in the Magnificent Seven when they come in there and they're trying to bury this Indian on Boot Hill, excuse me, Native Indian guy, and nobody wants to do it, and there's a whole bunch of guys lined up to shoot these guys who are going to, who are going to bury Yul Brynner and Steve McQueen, and they go ahead and do it anyway because they're really good guns. And that kind of said, this is cool. this is a good part, you know, of the Western genre. And I kind of took that with me, you know. I mean, it was a rough and tumble time, you know. It was, but I appreciated. I think it's become jaded over time a little bit, because at the time that I watched these movies, Bonanza was the other one I forgot to mention.
I was going to mention that one if you didn't. Yeah.
Bonanza was the other one that we used to watch regularly, and that show went on until I was like, I mean, it started before, almost when I was born, and went for I don't know how many years, and it was like the #1 show on TV. Now, granted, there wasn't like Netflix and all that other stuff going on, but still, it was impressive, you know. And you know, Little Joe and Hoss and Ben and Adam, and that was another. Those guys were good guys, you know. And you know, it clearly was maybe an over-optimistic view of these things, but I kind of liked it as a kid. You know, this is great, and so that's how I grew up with the westerns. And then of course there was the John Wayne stuff that came a little bit later.
Sure.
Although I remember one that I saw, Rio Bravo, pretty good movie.
Wonderful movie.
Oh, there were a couple others. Sorry, High Noon, Gas is Gonna Light, Winchester 73. James Stewart made some movies too that were pretty darn good. His characters, however, were a little more complex.
Yeah.
They ended up doing the right thing for the movie, given the times and stuff. But you know, Winchester 73, man, the gun to the West. So
you mentioned James Stewart. Have you ever seen Shenandoah?
I have seen that.
Yeah, that was a childhood favorite of mine too.
Yeah, that's a good one. So
nice.
There's so many. I have like
so many to choose from. Yeah.
Major Dundee, you know, those guys. Let's connect with you, and
so
it's crazy. Yeah.
So Dave, you mentioned the influence obviously your father had on you, and obviously you passed that on to Nick. So Nick, maybe what are some of your childhood memories of the Western genre, the influence from your dad?
Yeah, well, it's, you know, it might be a little sacrilege to start with the Duke when I Clint Eastwood thought. But
they had their own little feud, didn't they?
it was. I'm trying to remember. We were debating last night what year it was. Like if I was somewhere between 9 and 12, and TNT was running a ton of the Duke of John Wayne stuff because I spent my summers with my dad. And so in one summer we watched the original True Grit, Big Jake, and then the Cowboys. Which I don't know if you can spoil a film 60 years later, but something happens to John Wayne and the Cowboys that made me feel a certain kind of way as a preteen. So, and you know, man, like that, I think that's where it kind of started. And then when we get down the road, then as I got into like higher film thoughts, that's when I started watching Man with No Name trilogy and other Eastwood stuff and High Noon and Shane and all the other stuff.
I forgot that.
We'll talk about kind of down the line. But for me, what I love about Westerns is some of the stuff you said. I mean, when I was a kid, it was like all the usual stuff. Fast guns, men of few words, guys that always got the girl, awesome landscapes, which we'll talk about with Leone. And then I think you get older and you run into like the sort of complicated themes and moral grounds of that they get into. So it's not my favorite genre, but it's one I always am interested to like expand and explore for sure, I would say. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, and I would say the same. Like my palette has changed a little bit over the years, as all of ours does with films. But you know, as you're talking about your childhood growing up, both of you, like that's bringing back memories for me. For me too, it was like when I hear those shots going off, the rifleman, we just settle in, right? That was a weekly event in our household. We sit down and we watch, you know, Chuck Connors do his thing.
The Rifleman. Starring Chuck Connors.
or Bonanza. Those were the big ones for me growing up. But yeah, for me, it was Eastwood through and through. I got into the Duke and John Wayne a little later. That was my grandfather's influence on me. He was a big John Wayne fan. He would always be reading his Louis L'Amour novels there and watching the old films. But in our household, it was Eastwood. It was Eastwood. I remember watching the Dollars trilogy for the first time as a youngster, probably younger than I should have been. It's kind of weird. Like we were in a very kind of conservative household, but very liberal in movie viewing, and I'm grateful for that to this day. So I got to see a lot of movies at a young age, and this is one film that really stuck with me. It was The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly to this day. Yeah. I mean, the Western genre is complicated, I think. When you look back, some of it hasn't aged well in this day and age. The way that the indigenous communities are portrayed, et cetera, the sort of macho mentality. That's why a movie like Cry Macho and some of the later Eastwood Westerns I find very intriguing. It's almost a deconstruction and a critique of the genre itself. And so we'll get into some of that conversation there. But I think the one common denominator for all of us is they've been very influential going back to our younger lives. And so it's cool that we can talk about it today. I want to sort of pivot a little bit. Let's talk a little bit specifically about spaghetti Westerns, because the Dollars trilogy has been named spaghetti Westerns, part of sort of a subgenre of Westerns that are sort of in conversation with the Hollywood Westerns. But this is now coming out of Italy, and Sergio Leone, the director of these, is the big name, one of a few. What are your thoughts specifically on the similarities and differences between the Dollars trilogy and your typical maybe John Wayne movie or others? I'd love to have a conversation about spaghetti Westerns, what makes them maybe unique to the Western genre.
Should I tell you a little story?
Absolutely. Just jump in, Dave. I'm just here to listen and soak it all in.
Here's the story. So I go to the movie theater. We're going to go see Fistful of Dollars, which I think was released in
64.
7 in the U.S.
Oh, right, yeah.
So I'm like middle school, like 13, 14. I don't remember who I was with. I'm going to assume probably it was my dad, my brother, maybe one of my brothers or my friends. So I'm in there watching this movie. So Joe, or whoever he's called, comes out. He's wearing that cool, really, this guy is really cool looking. Where's his gun? I don't know, it's hidden somewhere.
Right.
He comes into this town. It looks like not a real nice town to come into. Why is this guy here? He's riding around, and they shoot up his donkey.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they shoot his donkey up. And I'm like, what the heck is this about? The donkey's running around. He's hanging on this thing and talking to, what's that guy's name? The bartender.
Yeah.
Servant. I forgot his name. Anyway.
It's his good
friend. Sayatano, or whatever his name was. Salvanito.
Yeah.
Salvanito. He's talking to this guy.
Yeah.
I'm going, where is this going? So, and then he comes there. He walks down to the, asks him who the, make a long story, he asks who's the strongest gang is, and it's the other, Rojo. So he goes down
Rojos and the Baxters, yeah.
Starts talking, says, just give him my donkey, and my donkey doesn't like that, blah, blah, blah. And then the beginning of the new era begins. He shoots these 4 guys in about 2. Oh, he tells them to get 3 coffins. Tells the Undertaker.
Better make it 4. Yeah.
Coffins ready. He said, okay, great. Because I never seen anybody shoot 3 guys in a gunfight.
Right.
Much less 4. And I'm sitting there, and the whole audience is going, whoa, like that. Because I had never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
That was my first experience with it. And I went, holy crap. I was hooked, So, and then he comes back and he said, "Oh, correction, make that 4 coffins." So he makes a joke out of all this. And
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And after that was my first experience with the spaghetti Western. I said,
"Get 3 coffins ready."
Huh?
Didn't you get the idea? We don't like to see bad boys like you in town. Go get your mule. You let him get away from you?
You see, that's what I want to talk to you about. He's feeling real bad.
Huh?
My mule. You see, he got all riled up when you men fired those shots at his feet.
Hey, you making some kind of joke?
No. You see, I understand you men were just playing around, but the mule, he just doesn't get it. Of course, if you were to all apologize... I don't think it's nice, you laughing. You see, my mule don't like people laughing. It's the crazy idea you're laughing at him. Now, if you apologize like I know you're going to, I might convince him that you really didn't mean it.
I saw the whole thing. You killed all 4 of them. You'll pay all right. You'll be strung up.
Who are you?
Don't fire a shot. I'm John Baxter, sheriff.
Yeah, well, if you're the sheriff, you better get these men underground. My mistake. War coffins.
This is something else. Because I never seen shooting like that. Even in the fastest gun alive, it's like Glenn Ford, he's pretty fast. But this guy,
Right.
I mean, really, in a matter of seconds, he shoots these guys. And I'm going, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was my experience with Fistful of Dollars. And I got
that's a great story. It's neat to hear from you, Dave, because you're experiencing this in real time, like as it's in theaters, right? I mean, we're watching this years later, in a different time where we can appreciate it, but there's the age of CGI and special effects and 20 dozens of people getting killed with lasers and bullets and superheroes or whatever, right? But for you, this is something new. This is something you've never seen before. Yeah?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Whereas I come to it, to me, when I think about the spaghetti westerns, like it's remarkable to me that they worked because they're made on, shot on location in southern Italy. They're made on a shoestring budget. I mean, I think Fistful was made for $200K, I think.
Yeah.
It mostly starred non-professional actors speaking in their own languages that they then later dubbed over to English. And then they grabbed, for The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, they grabbed Eastwood. Now, they grabbed Eastwood, but Eastwood in '66 isn't Eastwood now, So Van Cleef and Eli Wallach, those guys. So you get English guy or Americans who are not, they're top billed, but they're not really top billed.
Right.
And then dubbing and all this sort of stuff. So to me, the fact that the spaghetti westerns worked is amazing in a way. I mean, but I guess it's a testament to their raw power of storytelling and things like that. I mean, I was thinking about some of the distinctives of Leone, like, Jason, and there are things that you had mentioned to me the other day about like close-ups and stuff like that.
Yeah, I find, in conversation with the Hollywood Westerns, I find the sort of uprising of the spaghetti Westerns quite fascinating. I mean, you've got a sort of a different feel to the movie. When you're watching a spaghetti Western, you got this wide lens, wide frame, you got the wide landscapes. By design, it's almost a little bit grainier in its original form. Leone is a master of the close-ups. I mean, obviously we'll get to that in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but in all of his films there, he just goes from the wideness of the landscape to like zooming in just at someone's eyes or their fingers ready to pull their gun on the trigger, right? I don't think anybody does that better than him, and maybe, Ingmar Bergman's another one historically that masters the close-up shots. But then the sort of the philosophy of spaghetti westerns too. Like I think you look at most of the Hollywood westerns, and you look at John Wayne, right? It's very clearly who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. And although it's called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, I mean, they're all greedy people out for money, right? They're all sort of anti-heroes. And so it really blurs the lines of who's good and who's bad and who's better and who's worse. And I really appreciate that. It's not everybody's in their nice, neat little boxes or coffins in this case. And so it's kind of interesting to watch both what's happening in Hollywood and what's happening across the Atlantic in Italy.
Well, yeah, and I think the other thing too is the plots in these spaghetti westerns. I think they're a little more complex than some of the other westerns that I had experienced.
Yeah, true.
In fact, some of them are so complicated I couldn't follow them sometimes. It's like, well, you could follow them, but like in the first one, the way he's playing both sides, that was pretty cool actually. And
yeah.
As Nick tells me that wasn't the first one like it. I guess some Japanese fellow.
It was Kurosawa's.
Yeah,
Yojimbo. Yeah.
But there's a lot of plot movements in the first one.
Absolutely.
In particular the third one. So you can't just kind of watch it and read. You got to like really focus, and watch it. So it wasn't just the gunplay that got to me. I mean, I felt that too. And also, you're right about the characters. The characters, they're not all good. They're not all bad. Well, I'm not sure about. Some of them are pretty bad. But I mean, Eastwood character, I think, is fairly competent. And then we'll talk about Tuco later. But anyway, so, and, but I read somewhere that Eastwood was not even, I'm not even sure he was the first choice in the first movie.
Fistful, yeah.
Do you recall who was? Or?
Yeah, it was.
Was it Bronson? I don't know.
There was a list of them. Robert Mitchum.
Well, no, that was for Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah.
Good, Bad, and the Ugly. That was.
Well, Eastwood almost didn't do Good, the Bad, and the Ugly because he wanted a few dollars more, literally. I'll do it for a few dollars more, a few $100,000 more.
Yeah. That's what he wanted a boatload. But anyway, yeah, you're right. I think Leone actually went to California and visited him.
He had to court him, I think. Yeah. And then he was a little upset too, apparently. And, we'll get into The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly shortly in a deep dive. But I think he was a little upset that he wasn't the guy. I got to share the stage with these two other sort of main characters. And so I think that rubbed him the wrong way at first. But I think the movie's better because you've got some character development of other interesting characters, Eli Wallach in particular. Getting ahead of myself. We'll talk about him shortly, but I want to talk about Leone a little more. Let's talk about him. Not only his influence back then, but I think he's been a very influential director for some contemporary movie makers today and in years past. So, Nick, I know we talked about this. You want to kind of talk a little bit about the influence of Leone in some of the more modern cinema? Where have you seen it popping up, or where has your wife seen it popping up even?
Yeah, that's a good story. Yeah, so, yeah, before I tell that story, I guess it's funny, man. I wrote down almost exactly what you said. Like, to me, it's the juxtaposition of these like expansively massive vistas with these incredibly intimate close-ups.
Yeah.
And also, I think he's a really masterful wordless storyteller. Like the first 10 minutes of The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, there's no dialogue. Like he starts it with like vistas and eyes, and then these guys are going in, and there's a shootout. So. I read something, I don't know, it was a critic that said, Leone's, he makes operas, but the arias in his operas are the close-up, like the close-up.
That's good.
So I, that's all stuff, but yeah, so I'm watching, I put this is the story he's talking about my wife. Like I put The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly on, and Laura walks by, and she's like going in the kitchen doing something. So her back's to the screen, and then the whole like the doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, wah, 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 like all that kicks in. And Laura goes like, she's like over washing the dishes with her back to me, and she's like, "Why are you watching a Tarantino film?" She's like, "You're watching Kill Bill?" And and I'm like, "No, babe, this is the thing I was telling you about this video." So it just led into this discussion between us about, well, first of all, about how Tarantino is really an homage maker, really. I mean, he's bumming from Kung Fu films, and this is not a Tarantino pod, but he's definitely doing that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
But also just this idea that even if you don't know the good and the bad, the ugly, you probably know the score. You probably know the close-up scenes. You probably know draws and gunfights and buried treasure. And like, there's just little things that I think Leone put his finger on that have kind of hung with us. So, yeah.
Definitely. Tarantino has gone on record saying how influential Leone is. I mean, you watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I mean, you got the DiCaprio character, who's kind of this older, broken down actor, and he actually goes to do Italian westerns, right? That's right there in his script. A little homage making there. The other one, I mean, a good friend and collaborator of Tarantino is Robert Rodriguez as well, with some of his films, his sort of mariachi trilogy there, Desperado, etc. Here's a story just from the other day. I had no idea, but my son and I are watching. We like when the new little miniseries come out for Star Wars or the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that one just dropped this week called The Book of Boba Fett, famous character from the original Star Wars trilogy. And, some people watch it, and you guys might be familiar with The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian very much had a sort of old Western sort of vibe to it, and that continues forward. So the first episode is directed by Robert Rodriguez. I didn't even know that. And he cameos in it. And there's some scenes, some desert scenes that are literally paralleling, Blondie and Tuco in the desert, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It was kind of neat to see. So if you're familiar with the spaghetti westerns and Leone, you kind of see his fingerprints all over the place on the big screen and small screen today. So I don't think we can overstate the influence of spaghetti westerns and Leone well beyond the 60s.
He also influenced all the other spaghetti westerns that came out after.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. Many I haven't even explored. I've seen a few others, but yeah, exactly. He influenced a lot of his contemporaries in Italy.
Yeah.
Right, like, if you look at those massive Western lists, there's all these Italian directors.
Yeah. The Ringo movies. And
yes.
Serrano movies.
Yeah.
Serrano Death.
Django. Yeah.
Django Unchained, which is like Tarantino, I guess.
Yeah, he's trying to bump him.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I wouldn't be surprised if it influenced some of these other.
Yeah.
Other ones.
But I think I can speak for the three of us when I say the creme de la creme of the spaghetti westerns is, in fact, the one we're celebrating today, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. You talk to most critics, you look at it on Internet Movie Database, and it's up there. It's one of the top movies ever made in a lot of people's mind, regardless of whether or not you like the Western genre. So why don't we just do a bit of a deep dive? Let's talk about this film we're celebrating today, 55 years old. I think it's aged pretty well. Just watched it again this week myself. My son jumped in for the last half hour, as he normally does. It was a great time. So why don't we just talk about this particular movie? I'll share a story to lead off. And we've talked about the Western genre in general, but let's talk a little bit about our history and our love and our admiration for this film. So my story goes back to my childhood. This is one of the first Western movies that really captivated me. And I'm not as much of a music connoisseur as Nick is, but my parents had a turntable. They had a decent record collection, and they had the score, the soundtrack for this film. And I don't know where it ended up. I wish I would have hung on to it. It's long gone. But I remember as a kid, not only watching the movie, but I would just needle drop this over and over again. And I have a little toy horse I would be riding around the living room there with my hat like yours on, Dave. And, I was in that film, right? And just playing those tunes over and over again. And I was thinking about this week because I don't have a turntable, but now in this day and age, I got Spotify. So I'm firing up Spotify and I'm listening to this Ennio Morricone iconic score. And so that's one of my childhood memories of the film is the music. And we'll talk more about the music in a little bit, but that's one childhood story that takes me back to my early memories of this film. Any stories from your end or memories specifically with this film? Did you watch it together? back in the day, Nick? Do you recall? Or
You ever have? No, I think it was stuff we watched together would have been lesser Eastwood.
Yeah.
Like, well, not lesser, like, like High Plains Drifter, things like that.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. You probably have a story.
No, not really. I don't.
For me, it was
the first one was so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess for you, seeing them in order in the theater, right? Yeah.
It phased out my brain. I think I might have seen it in the theater. I don't really remember it as well, but I remember it was really good. So.
And it remains good to this day. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things when I watched it again the other day, I realized my appreciation for it actually increased. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think I kind of, how like I told you, Jason, like I had a period where I was just digging up like all of the Sight and Sound lists and the IMDb's top 250, and
exactly.
There's a lot of times when you come to something where its reputation has preceded it, and you're like, all right. So sometimes you want to be sort of cynical or critical, or will be this distance, and I mean, we'll get to this more in a second, but I think the first 30 minutes of this film and the last 25 minutes of this film are like unequivocally flawless. And so when I watched it, I was just like, yep, everybody's right. Like, I don't know what to say, like it's that good. Like, it's like saying God or something,
Yeah. If the first part of the movie and the last part are that good, I mean, you can forgive some missteps between. Yeah. And we can debate how flawless or perfect it is between the bookends, but the bookends, I'd put it against any movie in cinema history. I mean, it grabs you from the start, and that last 20 minutes is just iconic. Yeah. So where would you guys, we're not going to spend a lot of time splitting hairs and ranking, but in the pantheon of sort of Western lore and films, where might this one sort of rank all time personally for you guys?
Do you have it?
I think it's in my top 10.
It is. Yeah. We had kind of an expansive conversation about it. We were kind of like, it's so hard. If you're like going to make me put like number 10, number 9 for like,
I can't do that.
It becomes like just so difficult. But
depends on the mood you're in too, right? Or which day of the week it is, right?
Yeah. Because that was the thing I wanted to talk about. I wanted to bring up earlier is like, depending on how big or little you let your definition of a Western be.
Yeah, exactly.
It really can, the conversation, like for instance, like
is Kill Bill a Western? Yeah.
Right. yeah. It's gotta be a Western.
No Country for Old Men.
No Country for Old Men is a Western in my opinion. But here's a question from that same: is There Will Be Blood a Western?
Yeah.
It's taken place. I mean, I don't consider it really like a guns blazing Western. I don't really think of it like that. But
the setting, yeah.
And then they have people that consider the Treasure of the Sierra Madre a Western.
That's really a good. I haven't seen
that's a classic, also. Yeah,
it's great, but I mean, so it just depends. I think
I got another one. Dances with Wolves.
Right.
Is that
another classic.
That's definitely a Western.
It was Jeremiah Thompson. That's one of my favorite movies.
Yes, that's a
It's harder for Dave because he's seen literally thousands of them.
You've probably seen one of the new ones.
Butch Cassidy. What
the heck, man?
Yep.
Out of this alive, sure we are.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. I mean, for me, it's one of the top, probably couple, 2 or 3. Again, I haven't explored all of them, but again, there's always the childhood nostalgia of these films leaves a mark, right? So for me, that's carried forward into my own fatherhood, watching it with my kids. My wife, it's not really her cup of tea, but we've enjoyed it. So let's talk about the score. I told a little story about my love of the score, the soundtrack for this film. Let's talk a little bit about Ennio Morricone and the score of this film. I don't know if it hits you as much as it hits me, but what strikes you with the music and the score in this film?
Well, it's yeah, I mean, it's just,
oh my gosh, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, like
might be the most recognizable little tune, right, of all movies. That's up there with Jaws and Spielberg, right? Like,
I listened to all 3 of them. I really liked the first Fistful of Dollars. That score was that was the other thing. When I heard that score, at the beginning of the movie, and
it's
the nuances throughout the movie.
Yep.
really, really good score. But, you know, and I think it's pretty close to The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. I think The Good, Bad, and the Ugly might be a little bit better.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's just an amazing. That guy's amazing. You know?
Oh, it's incredible.
Morricone,
yeah.
Morricone, he's like freaking Mozart or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
He's like a movie score Mozart. That's a good comparison for sure.
it's just,
It adds so much to the film, like the mood, the emotions of it. And I find in this one of the three, and I agree, Fistful's great too. For a few dollars more, I don't know, it's kind of weird score. We were talking about this, Nick, too. I find it a little off at points, but this one, like, it just hits all the right notes at the right time. Like,
exactly.
it's just,
you know, when they do different scenes and they change it a little bit.
Right.
yeah.
To fit really, it's you know, whatever the scene's about, whether in the desert or, you know,
The desert, the prisoner of war camp with the band playing. I mean, yeah. And that's the other thing with this film in particular. Like, I think there's a few more tender-hearted moments in this one than the first two. And the music kind of takes you on a bit of that emotional journey. It's in between all the guns a-blazing and the tension. There are some moments of genuine humanness, right? Tuco and his brother, or, you know, the Union captain really about to die, wanting that bridge blown up, right? The guy can't even play his fiddle. There's crying, like some of that stuff, right? Sprinkled in. I think that's what elevates this one above the other two in one respect. Yeah, Nick, you were going to say something about the score. Jump in.
I think that justifies its length too, by the way. We'll get to that in the scene.
So should I bring it with the scenes?
About
Maybe I'll wait for the
the scene part.
because the score and the scenes, some of them, you know,
They go hand in hand for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the best scores have like short themes that are memorable and catchy and that fit what they're engaging with, right? I mean, if we're talking about the Imperial March in Star Wars or the Jaws theme or whatever, these aren't like virtuous. They're not like 400,000 notes. It's just a memorable theme that you can repeat. And I think that's Morricone captures that. Also, if you go look at Morricone's credits, the dude scored everything, not just Westerns, like 90 films, like he scored all kinds of stuff. He just died last year.
Oh, is that right?
I think he was like 90 or something. I mean, he was remarkable. But I wanted to tee you up for Ecstasy of Gold, man, because isn't that the graveyard score part?
Yes.
Yeah, when that song kicks in, and he just tumbles into the, like, goosebumps head to toe. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it right now. Yeah. Like, that might be my favorite 20 minutes in all of cinema. Like, that music hits, the piano starts playing there, and then the horns come in. Oh, you know, Tuco's running, and the camera's it's dizzying, right? He's looking for what he thinks is the grave, and then all of a sudden, you know, one shovel gets tossed, another shovel gets tossed. Start digging, and off we go, right? The most iconic scenes in movie history, right? Oh, it's incredible.
There's a female vocalist in that, I believe. She's really hot. She's amazing. I forgot her name, but that is an incredible. The Ecstasy of Gold is just, I don't know.
Well, that's just
there's no words for it, actually. It's just ecstasy.
Great
ecstasy
score.
Is a perfect word for it. Yeah.
I think the best moment is the best part of the score, I would say. So I think that just shows you
just
that,
amazing.
You know, he knew what he was doing, for sure.
Yeah, it was, and the way he played that in there too, it was just wow.
I mean, he's up there with Hans Zimmer and John Williams as the best of all time. I mean, on a very short list, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. That was just.
All right, well, let's pivot. Like I said, hand in glove. I mean, sometimes the score and the scenes go hand in hand. So let's just talk about we've each picked 5 scenes, and obviously, my number one, I already let the count. It's the final 20 minutes. I would just call that one long scene. When the Ecstasy of Gold hits, that's the peak for me. So I got 4 others beyond that, but why don't you guys let's kick around some scenes that are iconic. There's so many to choose from.
Did the final scene include the Ecstasy of Gold?
Well, for me, I just say when the Ecstasy of Gold begins, I just call that all one scene. I mean, there's little scenes within that, but I just consider that all one big continuous scene.
Yeah, I had an Ecstasy of Gold and the standoff. But you're right, that's all one.
Yeah.
And and actually, I would even include when he shoots the guy's rope and he goes.
The final point of dialogue there. You son of a!
Include that too. There's 3 scenes. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I just cheated and lumped it all together.
Yeah.
Here's one of mine. Tuco on the train tracks.
Oh yeah, it's great.
So when he puts that guy in that huge, I don't know how he got that guy up there. I don't think they showed him.
Right.
That guy was enormous.
Right.
Is he in another movie?
Yeah, he's in for a few dollars more as well.
He's got the eye thing going, you know.
He's part of the yeah.
He's part of Sertano, whatever. Angel Eyes.
Nino and the other one, I think his name is, yeah.
He's also part of Nino, yeah. So he drags that guy on there, you know, and that all happens. And I was reading about it. Turns out that there were a couple scenes that Tuco was in. I'm not going to discuss all, but there was one. In this one, if he had stood up, so I guess they really filmed it on the tracks.
They wanted to get it authentically done, yeah.
Yeah. So if he had stood up, there's things hanging out off the boxcar.
Right.
They said
The side steps, yeah.
he would be beheaded.
Yeah. It would have been it.
That would have been it.
That would have been it. He would have been decapitated. That's crazy. He said literally inches, missed his head by inches. I read that as well. That's wild.
Yeah. Oh, so
That's such a good scene, though, yeah.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe it. I'm going. Anyway, so that's one of my scenes.
Yeah, you don't want to break our friendship? Well, I'll break it. He puts them on the tracks. Yeah.
Trying to split that thing, you know.
Yeah.
That's just, and then he, you know, well, we'll talk about Tuco later. Anyway, so,
Tuco's the man.
he is a man.
So here's my thing about do you want to talk about so like do you consider the first 30 minutes all one scene, or?
Hey, if you can.
Well, here's what I think is remarkable about it. If you watch, it introduces a couple things. It introduces the 3 guys, each of them killing 3 people.
I'm sorry, it's not funny.
It is, but it's crazy.
It's true though.
And then if you watch the descriptions come on screen, like when Eastwood's the good, which is kind of a misnomer, but anyway, when Eastwood's good,
Wait a minute.
he gets on the screen. It's like exactly at the 30-minute mark. So there's just this like incredible symmetry, this prologue nature to them, and it's awesome. But within that, the very first 5 minutes of the film opens on these guys' eyes. It's like these 3 guys, and they're on opposite sides of this building, and it's like eyes, landscape, eyes, landscape. And it just keeps doing it, and it mirrors the duel at the end, and then they go in. And of course, someone's inside waiting for them. Shoot out, flash out, boom, introduce a guy. And it's just like, oh my God.
Big leg of chicken in his hand jumping out the window. Yeah.
It's just so good. And then they're going to go the very next sequence. And I'm sorry if I'm stepping in. Is Angel Eyes introduction, where he's going to see about Baxter, Jackson, or whoever the hell. Like it doesn't, somehow he's going to stumble on gold information, but it's kind of tertiary to like his initial intent, which is like one of my. Well, we'll get to quotes, but you know, I always see a job through I get paid to do, right? So that's Angel Eyes sort of
pillow on the face, boom, yeah.
Yeah, dude. And so the way he guns that under the table, here comes the older son. I mean, that whole scene is awesome. You know, they're just so a couple of those would be in my
for sure, for sure.
You guys.
Okay, well, let's just circle around. I'll mention one of mine here, and I kind of mentioned already, but I kind of cheated. I said I just called it tender human moments. So yeah. I identified 3: the captain, the Union captain, dying on his final breath, and seeing this bridge, which is basically costing thousands of people their lives. You know, and he's had this vision of blowing up the bridge, but he would get court-martialed for it. And so Eastwood and Tuco, they go and they do it, and he. In his final breath, he kind of smiles, and that's a really tender moment. And then shortly after that, as they're approaching, the ecstasy of gold scene, Eastwood finds this young Confederate soldier who's near death, and there's a tender moment. He kind of puts a jacket on him and gives him a smoke of the cigarello there, and and then he picks up the poncho, right? So the iconic poncho. So that's a tender moment as well, with the music, of course, helping. And then, Tuco and his brother. That's kind of an interesting, like, we actually get a little more character development in Tuco's backstory than the other two main characters. When he's being cared for, and you see the two different paths him and his brother took. One becomes a bandit, one becomes a priest, and there's a bit of a confrontation there, but a bit of some tenderness as well. And his brother kind of, as he leaves, asks forgiveness. And yeah, I found all three of those scenes worked well, and good little tender moments in between the gunslinging and the fights. So yeah, the tender human moments, that's one of my top 5. What else you got, Dave?
When they're singing that song,
the Prisoner of War Camp?
The Story of a Soldier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was my number 2. So yeah, you talk about that, please. Yeah.
Well, that was probably my 6th theme. We got them all,
Yeah.
But it's just, I started watching it and I almost it was so sad. And they were beating the crap out of Tuco.
Yeah. That whole scene is one of my favorites. You get the whole spectrum of emotion. Like, Tuco's getting beaten to a pulp. Everybody outside knows what's going on inside. They've all had treatment like that, right? And they're play that fiddle, more feeling. The guy's just barking at them, and he's shedding a tear, right? Because he knows this guy is just getting beat up inside. Meanwhile, the show, like the big old guy's just beating him to a pulp there, and that really is an important scene with the plot too, because that's where Angel Eyes gets some information, and then things are about to come to a head, right? So it takes things to the next level. So that's that whole Prisoner of War Camp scene is one of my favorites.
The other one I wanted to mention was the very first one that Nick mentioned. It's not one of my. It's a great scene. But one of the things I find interesting about this scene, they're all looking at this, it's got Tuco's name on it. They're going in there, I guess they're going after somebody, him, I guess. And then you hear all the shooting, and you figure that the 3 guys must have got what they were going for. Guess what? That's totally wrong. They open the door, and it's Tuco comes flying out. The scenes climax or end up sometimes in ways that you don't predict. Right. But yet they make sense after you find out about Tuco. Tuco's actually pretty good with a gun.
Oh yeah, all 3 of them are. Yeah.
Not like Blondie, but he's pretty darn good.
Absolutely.
So that was the thing. You've seen it. The thing about it is that it surprised me. I'm pretty sure it surprised me the first time I saw it, because I was going, and then, of course, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. But anyway,
right.
But you would think I would have expected it when you see that, but I didn't. You sort of expected it, but it just shows you how much he plays with your mind, Leone, and the way they produce this thing. So
yeah,
good the way they did that.
That's good. That's good. Nick, you got another scene there on your list you want to mention?
No, you're right. I mean, he's subverting expectations from time to time. It's impressive. Yeah. I love the scene just from a shoot 'em out fight. I like the scene when Tuco and Blondie are clearing the town of Angel Eyes' his baddies, like that crew of 6. There's smoke rolling through that town and cannon blast. Just from Western hoorah stuff. That's an awesome sequence.
Starts with he's petting the little kitten there, right? Every gun makes its own tune, large one. It's perfect timing, and then he goes to reunite with Tuco. Yeah.
Oh man! When he's in the tub, remember Tuco's in the tub, and
that's the next one on my list. Yeah, bubble bath with Tuco, I call it. Yeah.
It's so good.
I love that scene because here you are, you're midway through the movie,
right?
And it brings it back to the opening shot, right? You're like, oh, one of these 3 dudes survived.
I've been looking for you for 8 months. Whenever I should have had a gun in my right hand, I thought of you. Now I find you in exactly the position that suits me. I had lots of time to learn how to shoot with my left.
When you have to shoot, shoot. Don't talk.
Is he one of the people that survived that very first?
Yes, he was one of the.
Yeah, he's one of the guys that survived. At the first scene, you see him kind of coming out of the saloon there. You don't know if he's going to die, but he's stumbling out. And then, sure enough, mid-movie, Leone reintroduces him. I think it's brilliant. Yeah,
It is brilliant, and it, like you said, that it's like completely subversive.
That's the thing. If you can walk, that's the other thing. You get the crap beat out of you, you're still alive. You're okay.
Right.
You fully recover within a week. You know? Or 3
yeah, he
days.
lost an arm, but he survived,
Oh,
right?
he lost an arm, but he's okay. He went to a hospital and they fixed him.
A renting tourniquet, I guess.
And it, it just underscores something you said right from the get-go, Dave, like a rough and tumble time. Like everybody's motivated by greed or vengeance, it seems, right? It's what it's all about. Yeah.
Not romance.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got one more, and this one's from my wife. This is her favorite scene, and it's on my shirt here. It's my favorite basketball team, the Spurs.
Oh, yeah.
There are two kinds of Spurs, my friend. Those that come through the door, and those that come through the window.
Yeah.
And that's a quote my wife drops all the time around here. And we use it in regular household conversations sometimes. So it's such an iconic scene as well. So. Yeah, every scene. I mean, we can go on and on and on. Yeah.
Even that scene too is like, he's going to get hung, and then here comes the explosion.
Yeah, yeah.
But then he sends those 3 guys up to his room, right?
Yeah.
And he shoots all those guys. Zuko's a lot smarter than those 3
Yeah,
guys.
he's not smarter than you think, right? He's ugly, but he's smart.
And then the cannon hits. This is another thing. So, like in 5 minutes, I'm going crazy. But anyway, in 5 minutes, you see some really cool stuff. I mean,
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that was. I guess I don't know if you wanted me to give my take about like the episodic nature of the film.
Yeah, that's a good time to talk about that. Yeah.
Now, because I do. I mean, I think if you're going to level a criticism of this film, it would be a runtime criticism, right? Like this is a 3-hour film. Like, let's just
it feels like 3 hours.
And exactly, it does not move like certain other films, like, I don't know, Endgame or something like that, where people feel like it's flying, But I think it like character development in the little moments you mentioned, Jason, like that's the stuff that matters, because if you like these 3 dudes or you care about them and want to hang out with them, then you're in for 3 hours. And the tale really proceeds in like, it's almost like episodic. Like there's little episodes, like like give them, like you were saying about this, the whole Civil War scene could be taken as like, wait, these guys were just outside the Sad Hill Cemetery, and now we just have like a 25-minute bridge on the River Kwai excursus here, But like, if you look at it as characterization and a portrayal, Leone portraying the time and some of the other stuff, I think it actually enriches the whole experience, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think also, and then I'll shut up. Like the final duel wouldn't be as powerful in like an hour and a half movie. Like I have to just flat out spend some time with these guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Leone has gone on record as saying, like, in this film, maybe more so than the other two, he wanted to kind of give a glimpse of how the country was torn apart at that time. He wanted to have that Civil War backdrop sort of bubbling up. And I think he does it in spades. It's not just a shoot 'em up story. There's something deeper going on here, I think. And he establishes that with these scenes, with these episodes. Yeah. All right. Well, let's.
That was another thing, I think, to just.
Go ahead, Dave. Yeah.
It doesn't look like he thinks too much of the Civil War. That's what it looked like to me. It's kind of like almost a waste.
Yeah.
Of lives.
Yeah.
That was my sense.
Oh, most definitely. Like especially the drunk general's words and stuff.
Yeah, he's. I actually kind of like the drunk captain.
I do too.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I thought his view of the warriors, he didn't dishonor them. He just felt it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
And my sense was the Civil War was actually kind of. I felt I may be reading too much into this.
No, I don't think.
I think you're right on.
I felt kind of like he felt like it was and maybe it was Leone. This is Leone's putting himself into this.
Right.
And I think he does it in many ways, probably, but I think that's one way he does it. Is his feelings about the Civil War and maybe about war in general.
Right.
Maybe he's saying something about war in general. You know.
I think you're right. Even Eastwood has a line. He said, "I've never seen such a waste of so many good men," or something to that effect. Right? It's right in the script. Yeah.
He says it right out loud, right in front of all the soldiers too.
Right out loud. Right. It's not that subtle. Yeah, I think it's there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, it's a portrayal of futility. Like, they decided this bridge was important, and so now we're making it important. We go out and fight for a little bit. They die, we come back and do it again. I mean, it's just like a hamster wheel of futility, man. Like, so you could isolate that scene and be like, make it 20 minutes shorter, or you could be like, wow, what a powerful characterization that makes these characters richer. And the fact that they are just sort of stumbling upon this scene on the way to the ecstasy of gold is, I don't know, man. It's unique, dude. It's like Dan was saying, it's a complex and layered story. I would go so you could even call it messy.
It is.
And that's I think what makes it epic in a way that Fistful's not.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, on that note of messiness, why don't we?
Okay.
Let's pick some nits here. Like, is there any little? We all love this movie, but are there any nitpicking we can do here? I mean, out of full respect for Leone in this movie, we all love it, but it might have some flaws or minor things that we want to nitpick. Anything from your end, guys?
You guys both had one that I liked that both you guys had told me.
I actually had two.
Okay.
Let me go with one that's kind of big, but I think I might have resolved. So, like the whole thing with the gold, stealing the gold. So when I watched it, I kind of go, did he steal it from this Brady guy who sent Angel Eyes to kill this other guy who knew who Carson was? And I said, no, that's probably not right. So did he steal it from the Union guys?
Right.
No, probably stole it from the Confederates. And because I read this little story about how they used to pay the troops.
Yeah.
Not pay the troops, but there was gold. There's apparently a lot of lost gold.
Oh, yeah. It's like Nazi Germany.
You said it was a cash box. I'm going to guess that maybe they used it to pay the troops or the generals or somebody.
Yeah.
They probably stole it from the Confederates. That brings me to my second part of the nitpick. This carriage is going through the desert, and there's all these dead guys, except for the one guy who's really important. That's kind of nice.
That's convenient.
Yeah, that was very
nice
convenient.
2 ex machina there.
And you know, who killed these guys? Did they get killed by Colonel Gandy's troops?
Gandy, yeah.
Or were they running from the Confederates because the Confederates realized it stole the gold?
Could just
I was assuming it was the Union.
So I think I was kind of resolved it. It was probably the Union guys that killed them, and they probably stole it from the Confederates. I'm going to guess. You know, regardless, it's a heck of a lot of gold. You know.
Oh yeah. No, it's good.
Unbelievably valuable.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. Yeah. Nick, you got any nitpicks?
Well, I like the one that you would go with yours first, because it might trigger what I was going to say.
Is that the extended cut versus or the bridge or what?
No, the extended cut.
Okay, yeah, let me talk about that. So some people may not know that there are two versions of this film. There's the original Italian version, which is the longer running time, right on 3 hours. And then the international cut originally was, I think they cut just over 20 minutes out.
Yeah.
Now, the version I have on DVD, and most of the versions you can get your hand on, are the original Italian cut. So when they re-released everything on DVD and Blu-ray, what they had to do was they had to redub those extra scenes that were originally cut out of the international version.
Okay.
Which is so frustrating. And I was lamenting this to Nick, because if you watch it or listen closely, you'll actually hear Tuco and Blondie in a few of their scenes. I think they're all the worst scenes that were cut out. There's a scene where Tuco's in a cave and he's talking to a dead chicken there, and he's recruiting kind of his ensemble there, his entourage, and there's a couple other scenes, and you can tell Tuco's voice is the voice of like 80-year-old Eli Wallach, and they're redubbing it back into those scenes. Same with Eastwood, they're redubbing the voice, and you can see it doesn't fit, it's not consistent. And so all the scenes that were cut were scenes that don't really have a bearing on the plot. They're just sort of side scenes, a few more conversations with Confederate troops, or the scenes that help us understand how did Angel Eyes get his gang of guys, how did Tuco get his gang of guys. But I don't think they really do anything. And actually, I think they do a disservice to the movie. So that's my major sort of nitpick. So if you're looking to pick up this movie, and you can find a Blu-ray or DVD that has the non-extended cut, I think it's better. It shortens the runtime, and it gets rid of some of those awkward redubbing scenes that are not necessary.
My wife got the DVD.
Yeah.
She bought a Blu-ray player, and there are like 7 deleted scenes, and one of them, Angel Eyes went to this Confederate camp.
Yes.
In the desert. Yep. And actually, that one was pretty good because it explained something about, Bill Carson and who he was. It explained a little bit more, and about Colonel Gamby, the Union soldiers. They were bad news, and they were hunting these Confederates down. So that one I liked. The other 6 that I watched, they were okay.
Yeah, I don't think they're really necessary. I think they just kind of meander, and they don't really do a service to the characterization. They just kind of fill in the gaps of, oh, where did these guys come from? I don't need to really know. I'm like, I just assume Angel Eyes and Tuco, they have their connections already, right? And so, of course, they're going to recruit some muscle to help them, right? So, for me, it didn't work. Yeah.
Like when that scene where those 3 guys come into Clint's room, and later, the guy comes in, he does the spur thing. I tried to wonder where did those 3 guys come from? How did he pick them up? And then you're right. Tuco knows a lot of people.
They're connected, right? They have history, right? Obviously, Angel Eyes and Tuco knew each other, right?
I know.
Prisoner of War camp. Long time no see, Tuco. Well, I don't need to know. Like, I just assume, right? It's a small world back then. All these guys are connected somehow. They've crossed paths before. Let's carry on. I don't need flashbacks in this movie.
I think that's the other part of the movie that's kind of cool, is that you see, I saw it and go, how did he do that? And then you realize, of course he could do that. He's good.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the Tuco...
You get a glimpse into his character.
Right, the Angel Eyes thing, I was like, that was one of my nitpicks of like, how these guys know each other? But then I was like, it's like the bounty hunter circuit, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. The gunfighter circuit.
Yeah.
But I do have one, though, like, plot-wise, like... As much as I love the bridge scene, I'm like, 2 things. One, I'm pretty sure historically the dynamite they used didn't exist yet. It wasn't invented. So that's kind of a major issue. I think they're using something that didn't even exist yet. You can check my math on that. But I don't think it's invented yet. So there's that. And the other thing, I'm like, just walk down the river a couple miles and cross over, right? Like, you can kind of probably take a detour and bypass this battle zone. I mean, I know Leone wanted that scene in the vision. I love it. I'm glad it's there, but this is in my mind. I'm like, you don't need to blow up this thing. That makes for better cinema, right?
I actually have another nitpick about that scene.
Yeah.
Like, they're in there for a long time putting down dynamite, and nobody's doing anything.
Yeah.
At them, like the Confederates, I'm like, oh, just going to blow up the bridge. And they're probably all going, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Blow that bridge up,
Yeah.
But nobody's like doing anything. They're all looking at them. They're like walking around and waiting around in the water. Yeah. I'm going, oh, they didn't just put one dynamite. They put the whole bridge on there, And then, like you said, later on, they just walk across the river. Just walk right across the river. Why do they need a bridge?
Yeah. It's not that deep. They're wading across up to their waist. Yeah. And related to that scene, we find out later that Eastwood has emptied his gun. You think anybody who's anybody is going to check their gun first thing in the morning, or like they're going to know the weight of it? Like, Tuco's like, unbeknownst to him, his gun's empty.
You know the story behind the bridge building? I was reading about it. They actually got some of Franco's army, these soldiers, I guess, and actually they hired a bunch of militiamen too for the movie. And they hired these soldiers to build the bridge. And then they, like you said, they used all this black powder or something. And it took an enormous amount of it to blow up the bridge.
And they had to do 2 takes? because they screwed up the first time. They had to rebuild it.
Not in the 1860s either, 1960s.
Yeah. Yeah. Wild stuff.
It's a great scene. Though. I'm kind of glad.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad it's there. Nit Picks aside, I'm glad it's there. And, you know, if I had another nitpick, I don't want to linger because I love this movie. It's probably my top 10 all time. So, but it's the final iconic scene, just from a logical perspective, a couple things. Eastwood could have given any name, not Arch Stanton. Even if Eastwood doesn't get out alive, surely he's going to figure out, well, he's told me that name because it's in proximity to that name. Oh, look, unknown. Maybe I'll try there. And also, like, if Eastwood knows that Tuco's gun's empty, I'm just shooting Van Cleef right out of the gate. I'm not going to wait. But then we missed out on the most iconic scene in the movie, right? But just logically, like, hey, his gun's empty. I'm not gonna wait here for 5 minutes. I'm just gonna pull the trigger, put him in his grave right now.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, you're right.
My son caught that one too. He's like, if his gun's empty, Dad, why doesn't he just shoot the other guy? I'm like, good point, son.
Yeah, it's like his code.
Oh, wait a minute. He did shoot the gun out. Did he shoot the gun out of the hands of
No, he doesn't.
Tuco?
No, he shot the. No.
Yeah,
I think Van Cleef was. I don't know who's drawing first. Is Van Cleef drawing first? Going. My theory is this. Nick and I, maybe we disagree on this. My theory is as they're spreading out, taking positions. You know, Tuco's giving Van Cleef the stare down, right? Angel eyes. Because he got the crap beat out of him because of him earlier in the movie, right? So if he's got a vendetta against anyone, it's him first. And so maybe they're both thinking they're going to go for each other. So maybe they're both drawn for each other. Meanwhile, Eastwood's just waiting and playing it out, knowing he's got ace in the hole with Tuco's gun being empty. So,
But he's also, the thing that brings up a point though. Like, there were times where Eastwood did not wait for the other guy; he would just shoot him. But there were other times, like in a few dollars more, where he says, "I want to take you in. I can take you in dead or alive." He actually gives the guy a chance, but it's not necessarily clear when that's going to happen. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, the scene is fantastic. The end of that movie.
Oh, of course. The movie wouldn't be the same without it, right?
It's just an amazing scene. So
yeah, and I wouldn't have all those childhood memories playing that on needle dropping that over and over again. So it's good. All right, very quickly, like we want to get into Eastwood in general. There's 5 movies we want to mention beyond this movie, but who wins the movie?
Oh my gosh,
who wins the movie? This is tough call. Who wins the movie?
Neo. Neo Tuco.
Yeah,
he's the one.
Yeah.
No, I can't. Well,
it's Tuco.
I actually really like Clint Eastwood, of course, but I got to say that.
Yeah, I like Eastwood too, but
I felt that Tuco.
I don't know, man. Maybe Morricone wins.
Morricone. Yeah,
I'll go with Tuco too. If we're talking about on screen, yeah, this is Eli Wallach's movie.
Well,
he's phenomenal.
I did not like Van Cleef. Van Cleef I like a lot, but I didn't like his character. I did not like. I actually kind of like Tuco, even though when they're hanging him, he's guilty of child molestation, murder, every single crime.
The rap sheet's like 5 minutes long.
One of the 10 Commandments, and more than that.
Right, like if he did all that stuff, it's unbelievable.
God's probably up there going, "What the heck? Who is this guy?" I don't I mean,
right?
It's just. And he's amazing in the movie.
He's got such a screen presence, though, right? I mean, he just gives it. He just goes full on.
I think that's why Eastwood was pretty pissed off, because he felt that the runtime was bloated and not expansive, and that the only guy who was really developed was Tuco. And I have to say, there's a certain degree to which he has a point. I mean, you could make the argument that Eastwood himself is much better in Fistful, and maybe even the second one. Like, just in terms of, like, the richness of his character, because he's the center of the universe is sort of orbiting around him in the first 2 films.
Actually, I think...
In this one, it's
right.
it's just more Tuco.
But who do people go to see? Think about that. They're probably not going to see Eli Wallach.
No, Eastwood's the draw. He's the name, and this really launches him into his career. And now we're gonna segue into Eastwood's career, but he's got to thank Leone for putting him on the map. It wasn't his TV shows that put him on the map. It's not Rawhide. It's this, right? So, yeah.
Well, I think Rawhide caught the attention of Leone, but
for sure.
But yeah, you're
sky's the limit after this for him, though. Yeah.
But Wallach is he's great in the movie.
Yeah.
And he was
He's great.
I think he's in the Magnificent Seven too. He's the bad guy in the Magnificent Seven.
Yep.
He doesn't steal the show, but he's pretty good in that movie.
Yeah. No, he is. All right. Well, let's just pay homage to Clint Eastwood, who's still active as a director and an actor. 91 years old, still kind of rode a horse and cried macho this last year, which is not a great movie, but it's fascinating to see him still going. He says he wants to go till he's 100, and more power to him. I'll take more Eastwood any day of the week.
Yeah.
So we've all picked 5 Eastwood movies. Maybe they're our favorite, maybe they're best, maybe they're just ones we want to talk about. There's a lot to choose from here. And surprise, surprise, spoiler alert, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is one of the 5 for all of us. And we've spent a lot of time talking about that. So we won't talk anymore about that movie. There's another Western from Clint Eastwood. We'll keep that a secret. You might be wise to which one. That's on all of our lists as well. So we'll talk about that at the end. That leaves 3 others on each of our lists, right? There may be some crossover. We haven't seen each other's lists. But yeah, you guys start and dive in. Maybe Dave, you want to go first? Which other Clint Eastwood movie did you want to discuss and why you like it or think it's one of his best?
I thought I had 6 bullets. I don't
There
know.
it is.
Magnum Force.
You picked the right one. Yes.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I should have picked the other one.
No, you did. That's my favorite. Awesome. I was like, I almost put Magnum Force. I'm like, I hope Dave picks it. Dirty Harry's the obvious choice, but
That's a great one.
Yes.
I prefer Magnum Force too.
That's the second one, right?
Yeah.
I got to talk about Dirty Harry too.
Yeah. You can
So tell me about why you like Magnum Force. I want to hear about your love for Magnum Force.
I tell you, so Dirty. Let me just say something real quick about Dirty Harry. I worked in a movie theater at the time. I was like freshman in college. I was at Carolina, University of North Carolina, and I would pay. They paid me like $1.50 to take tickets at the door or the concession. That was hard work. There wasn't really a good cash register there. But anyway, after they closed the doors, right? I would go in and watch some of the movie. I got to see parts of Dirty Harry about 9 times, 9 parts, before I saw the whole movie. Same thing with The French Connection.
Yeah.
So that's my introduction to Dirty Harry, and I love Dirty Harry. But the reason why I really like Magnum Force is because, there's this whole Law and Order thing, which I was cool with. And he kind of stretches the law a little bit in Dirty Harry, a little bit, just a little bit, a lot actually. But anyway, in Magnum Force, the real bad guys are the cops. Yeah. And there's a bunch of these young cops in there who later become do pretty well in the movies, in the cinema. And the ultimate, the commissioner is also, they're all involved in this conspiracy theory. Innocent people get hurt or killed, and it takes him a while to figure it out. So there's a good plot development too.
Yeah, I think it's the longest running time of the 5. Yeah,
it takes him a while to kind of figure out what's going on, and then he kind of but he's a smart guy. He's a tough guy. He's a smart guy too, but eventually he figures it out, and they try to get him on board. So I really like the theme. Yeah. And I was thinking, does this actually really happen? And, in some cases it probably did. Like Serpico is about crooked cops, and think about what happens with crooked cops. It's not a good thing, So I thought it was a good morality play.
Yeah, it's my favorite of the 5 as well. Arguably one of the better sequels ever, too.
Exactly.
It's hard to follow up Dirty Harry's great.
It is.
Sudden Impact's good, too. Those are my top 3, but Magnum Force is my favorite of the bunch. Yeah, cool. I'm glad you mentioned that. I almost put it on. What I did is I picked 5 movies from 5 different decades, and I was really stuck in the 70s because I think the 70s is peak Eastwood. He's got so many things going on, different genres in the 70s. So I'm glad you mentioned that one. I was secretly hoping someone would.
So yeah.
Nick, what do you got? You got something on your list for us, sir?
Well, so 1 and 2 we're coming back to, given that we're talking about one of those. So my number 3 is The Outlaw Josie Wales, which
Nice.
is maybe my favorite Eastwood film. Like, honestly, I love The Outlaw Josie Wales. I think it's an awesome flick. And
really good.
it is, dude. It's so good. And yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen it super recently again. You know what I mean? So I couldn't like draw up my favorite scenes and stuff, but it's the same kind of thing where he's sort of hovering around real world battles and things. It's a pretty intense sequence with I don't know if it's a Gatling gun. Is it a Gatling gun? Remember? Behind they draw it up.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty sick.
Yeah.
And it just packs a punch in a way that some of his, like, I guess, lighter westerns don't, maybe. So that would be my number. I had it as number 3 in terms of best, but it honestly might be my favorite. I'll have to go back and watch it again. But
Nice.
I think you have it too.
I do. It's
What year is that? That's mid 70s, right? Or 75 or 6, isn't it?
I'd have to Google it. But,
I'll look now. I think it's 76. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Then. You can.
Well, the other thing I like about it was, first of all, is the older Indian fella,
Yeah, 76.
Okay.
who's a great character,
Right.
and a woman, the well, they call her a squaw, but I mean the Indian lady.
Yeah.
Native American.
Yeah.
And he takes care of them. He kind of brings them along.
Right.
Takes care of those people, and the guy chasing him's just he's kind of bad and kind of good. He's not clear. And then, of course, the meeting with the Indian chief. That's like an iconic.
Right.
That is an amazing scene. Which, in my opinion, is the way they should have treated them all along.
Yeah, no kidding.
Giving them their private property, and they can do what they want with their land. Anyway, but I mean, it's just. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
It's a great movie.
No, yeah, you're hitting some of the things. Yeah, like some of his goodness, I think, or his sort of caretaking nature aspects come out in that film too.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
He takes care of it. I mean, the other
one. This is working out well because I'm like, what movies are they gonna pick? I don't just want to I want to get as many Eastwood movies to talk about as possible. I'm like, I didn't put any Dirty Harrys on my list. Yeah, I don't mind them, the series. I don't think it's aged that well, to be honest. Some of the policing narrative and the politics in it, but it's a good old time. I'm glad Magnum Force is there. Josie Wales, if this was top 5 Eastwood Westerns, Josie Wales would be in there, along with Unforgiven, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, High Plains Drifter, and Pale Rider. Those are my top 5 Westerns. But I didn't add any Westerns because, the reality is, here's Eastwood. He's the man with no name, and he's Dirty Harry. That's his persona. But he's so much more than that over his history of filmmaking. And as much as I like Eastwood, the actor, I think he's better as a director, personally. That's no slight on him as an actor, but he's directed some great films. I mean, he's a multiple Best Director Academy Award winner, and rightfully so. So I've got, all 4 movies outside of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly on my list are movies that Eastwood directed. And I want to mention what I think is the most underrated Eastwood movie, 1982. Now, let's make a cocktail together, all right? We're going to mix up a cocktail here. We got a little bit of Mission Impossible,
Okay.
a little Hunt for Red October, a little Top Gun, with a pinch of Star Wars. Doesn't that sound like a great cocktail? Firefox, 1982. Nobody gives loves to Firefox. I like this movie a lot. I just watched it again recently. You won't find this on many top 5, top 10 lists, but here's Eastwood. He's playing Mitchell Gant. He's a retired Air Force pilot. He's suffering from PTSD, hallucinations after being a POW in the Vietnam War. He's called back into action after the U.S. learns that the U.S. This is Cold War, right? A good old Cold War spy sci-fi thriller. Of course, it's the Russians. They've developed this high-tech MiG-31 plane, codenamed Firefox. And it can fly 6 times the speed of sound. It's invisible to radar. It's like the Hunt for Red October in the sky instead of in the water, basically. It's got a weapon system commanded by a pilot. So it's mind. You don't speak or press buttons. It's your mind. Your mind controls. But you have to think in Russian, right? And because he's able to speak and think in Russian, and because he was somebody back in the Vietnam War, he's recruited out of retirement to go on this covert operation to Russia. And so I love it because not just the film itself, but zooming out and looking at the history of Eastwood up to this point, right? He's this man with no name, full of macho, bravado. He's Dirty Harry, right? He doesn't flinch. But 5 minutes into this movie, the opening scene, he's jogging in the wilderness in Alaska, and these helicopters are coming in. You're like, what's going on? And then he busts it back to his house, and he's huddled in the corner, hallucinating, sweating with a gun. This is not the man with no name. This is not Dirty Harry. This is a vulnerable, damaged guy. And so it's a total different persona for Eastwood. And so just out of the self-contained story, which is great, seeing as it's thrusting Eastwood now into some new roles, I find it very fascinating, and I think it's aged well. And so Firefox, I want to give it some love. Not a lot of people do. It's just a great time. Have you seen this movie, Nick?
I have not seen it.
Oh, you got to watch this. I love you've seen this, right, Dave?
Yeah, it was a while ago. But yeah, he's
okay.
It was good.
Yeah, I pulled it off the shelf again this week. It was a good time. And literally like 20 minutes in, he's already like off to Russia. It just goes. And then you got some cool like dogfighting, Top Gun stuff in the last half hour. It's great. Literally Mission Impossible, Hunt for October, Top Gun. There's this cool homage to Star Wars as well. I like it. Firefox. Give it a look if you haven't seen it, folks.
All right.
Back to you, Dave. What do you got on your list?
Yeah, another one. Oh, wow. I like the next one.
So we got so I was thinking High Plains Drifter or Pale Rider.
Nice.
I'm gonna go with Kelly's Heroes.
Kelly's Heroes. I love
Oh, beautiful. Good choice.
I don't know. It's really wacky. It's got Don Rickles in it.
It's awesome though. Speaking of good times, yeah.
Donald Sutherland.
He's great. He wins that movie.
Now, what's the guy who was on
Telly Savalas?
Telly Savalas is in it.
Kojak, yeah. You've seen this, right, Nick?
Crazy German. Crazy German. Anyway, I just really, it's another treasure story.
Oh, really? A good sinking. Okay.
Treasure.
That's another childhood favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember, every time I see it, I go, oh, I love that movie.
I've seen like.
So maybe I don't know if it's the best movie he made, but it's definitely one of my
favorites.
Rewatchables,
Yeah. That's a good choice. That's like my guilty pleasures, Firefox. So yeah, similar. Yeah.
It's a guilty pleasure movie. Yeah.
Good popcorn flick, just hanging out.
Yeah.
Nick's taking notes here. He's lining up a few more for 2022.
That one too is like he's got like 45 movies.
I do have like 45 of them.
No, I mean you do, but I'm saying like Eastwood. He's directed 42 films, I think, and he's starred in 100 something.
Cat Ballou. Anyway.
Yeah.
That's one of the movies I forgot. I watched that movie and I thought that was hilarious.
Isn't Fonda in that? Is Jane Fonda?
Yeah, Lee Marvin's great.
Nice. Kelly's Heroes. That's a great pick, Dave. It's a great pick.
So, all right.
I like the other one.
Back around to me, right?
Your turn.
Yeah. All right. So I was like, all right, I did 3 Westerns. Let me see. I need to get something. Because, yeah, like High Plains Drifter would definitely be up there for me. Well, honestly, Fistful of Dollars, I love.
Great movie.
But I went with the first Dirty Harry because to be honest, I've not seen parts of the last couple Dirty Harrys. So okay. It's kind of a blind spot for me. But the first one is awesome, man. And really good. I think the villain's great in the first movie.
Scorpio Killer.
Yeah. So, he's just he's trippy, man. And the whole the Do You Feel Lucky stuff, and that's an iconic segment that gets run back around. Yeah. Do you feel lucky?
I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've kind of lost track myself. But Ian, this is a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off. You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Hey, I got to know.
And what else? It's just cool to see Eastwood doing Eastwood type stuff, but not in his traditional Western garb, you know? So I think when he transitioned over to the franchise, you know, just when I watched the first one just as an isolated thing, I was like, wow, this is a pretty terrific thing. So yeah, I know it's like the Stan, I'm a younger guy, let me pick Dirty Harry, but that's what I picked for my
No. This is perfect, Nick. That was 1971, right?
Yeah, it is 71.
Okay. So 1971, Harry Callahan is unveiled to the world.
Yes.
Also in 1971, Eastwood directs his first film. Little psychological thriller called Play Misty for Me.
Oh my gosh.
I've not seen this either.
Oh, this is so your jam, Nick. This is your jam.
Yeah, I've not seen. I know.
You might be familiar with a movie in the 80s called Fatal Attraction.
I am familiar with that one, yeah.
Eastwood was pissed that they stole this movie to make Fatal Attraction. This is Fatal Attraction in the 70s.
No way.
I think
The needle drops. Basically, Eastwood plays a sort of a midnight shift DJ. And every night, this mysterious woman calls in and just says, "Play Misty for me" on the phone, right? And so, you know, when he's not working, he's drinking at the bar, hanging out, right? So Eastwood, right? The first movie I'm going to direct, I'm just this macho man that all the girls want, right? So he's at the bar after one of his shifts, and there's this girl sitting across the bar. She's been there all night waiting for someone, turning guys away, and she comes over, and turns out she's the girl that calls every night and says, "Play Misty for me." Well, from there, you know, they have a one-night stand, they have a casual relationship, but basically she's like Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction. And meanwhile, he's got another girl that he's considering settling down with to marry. And so there's this sort of interplay. And I tell you, Jessica Walter plays the girl who's just psycho. Speaking of psycho, it's got some Hitchcock Psycho vibes to it. Now, it's not on that level, not quite. But it is phenomenal. There's a lot of tension in this movie, and I think it still is one of his best movies. And this is first time director Eastwood, 1971. If you watch Dirty Harry, there's a cool little scene in Dirty Harry. I discovered this recently, where there's a cinema and it shows what's playing at the cinema is Play Misty for Me, the same year, which is kind of cool. So Nick, you got to get on this one too, man. I think you'll enjoy this one. It's very tense, but it's a good just kind of hangout movie. Dave, you've seen this, right? I mean, you appreciate this one, or
did it surprise you? I was a little surprised by it. I thought it was really good, though. Really,
I was
really
pleasantly
good.
surprised, and just watched it again recently. It holds up pretty well, right? And I'll put it on par with Fatal Attraction any day of the week. Yeah.
It was scary. It's pretty scary.
So I wanted to mention that because I love Eastwood, the director, and this is his first go around sitting in the director's chair, and it's a good one. I mean, he's made some other classics since, but I love this movie, and I think you should watch it.
Where do you think he got the money to make the movie? Good.
I think he made more for Good, the Bad, and the Ugly than the whole budget of Fistful of Dollars. So he was on his way. and Don Siegel, director of Dirty Harry, actually cameos in Play Misty for Me. Yeah.
Oh no! Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So cool stuff there.
That is.
So yeah, same year as Dirty Harry. He's directing this. That's a good year. That really launches his career beyond the trilogy, right? So, all right. So that's one of mine on my list. What do you got? One more for us, Dave?
No.
Oh yeah, you covered it.
Yeah, because the Outlaw was on, and Magnum Force, and Kelly's Heroes, and
Oh yeah, Kelly's Heroes was the other one. That's right. Yeah.
so I'm done.
Okay, so for my last one, here's what I did. Okay, so I wanted to catch Eastwood, the director. Well, I mean, he actually directed Josie Wales, but I wanted to catch a non-Western Eastwood directing. So I went with a populist choice that meant a lot to me when it came out, and a little more artful film that maybe less people have seen that's newer. So the first one's Mystic River, which is,
Nice.
I think, was awesome at the time. I don't even like Sean Penn, and it's a great Sean Penn role. Robbins is good in it, and I think it's kind of like this gritty urban crime drama stuff, a la Michael Mann, which we often talk about. It's his own spin on that kind of thing. He's hanging out in Boston long before Affleck did the Boston flicks and the odds that were good, and it's about brothers' lives that kind of come apart through to some crime and some stuff that's going on. But it's if you have not seen Mystic River, I'd say that people that are like, I don't really like Eastwood the director, it's good. It's a good film.
Charles is a well-made movie.
Yeah, it's extremely well made.
I think it won Best Picture.
I don't think it won Best Picture.
Once
Got some nominations though. Yeah.
Nominated for a bunch of
A
stuff.
bunch of stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Another one, I don't know if people have seen as much. He made a 2-film. I don't remember the year. He made 2 films the same year. He made one in English and one in Japanese about the battles in World War II. So the more famous English one is Flags of Our Fathers, but the one I think is actually a better film.
Yes, it is better.
Letters
from Iwo Jima. Yeah.
It's terrific. It's awesome. You have to read subs, but it's all about these Japanese guys, and they're trying to hold Iwo Jima, and it's kind of a lost cause, and they're getting letters from home and writing, and it captures the valor of war, but also the futility and stuff like that. Whereas I think Flags is much more about the erection of the monument of Iwo Jima versus jingoism and the ways that patriotism plays itself out and stuff like that. So Letters from Iwo Jima is excellent, and I think that's my like arty recommendation for an Eastwood director.
No, those are good choices both. I'm glad you didn't say American Sniper.
I'm not a big fan of that.
I don't like that.
Yeah, and I'm not as big a fan of American Sniper.
Gran Torino, too.
I'm surprised you didn't have Torino. Actually.
Honorable mention, Gran Torino. Yeah. Well, Dave, you asked for it. I'm here to deliver. An Eastwood directed movie that did win Best Picture. I know some people think this one's overrated, but I still adore this film, $1 Million Baby, 2004.
It was good. Well done. I agree.
Yeah.
I think this movie deserved all its accolades.
Well made.
I know the second half of this movie is the ultimate downer for some. It really takes a dark turn, but I like movies that hit different emotional notes. It doesn't feel forced or manipulated, and I was along for the journey here. I was invested in these characters. Give me any father-daughter story, and I'm in. Well-written and acted father-daughter story, and that's really what this is, right? Eastwood takes Hilary Swank, this underdog, it's kind of a female version of Rocky, under his wings. And, he's got his own issues with his estranged daughter, and, he's a little rough around the edges. Morgan Freeman helps sort of calm him down in this movie. He's great in this movie as well. And he just trains her, but it's not just a sports movie. It's a relationship movie. It really is about him finding some healing in his life. And she finds some healing in her life too, before, the harrowing midpoint scene that takes it in a different direction. Those that haven't seen $1 Million Baby, I think you need to watch it. It's a fantastic film, but you're going to want to have some Kleenex on hand. There are some harrowing scenes and some, you'll be shedding some tears. But yeah, it won Best Picture, it won Best Director, won Best Actress, and it won Best Supporting Actor. mean, that's quite the haul it made that year, right? And any year, even if it's a weak year, that's some high acclaim. So, $1 Million Baby, it's still one of my favorites from him, and shows Eastwood, both the actor and the director, doing his thing. So.
Yeah.
Whew. Now we got.
Wow, man, and we're just scratching the surface. There's so many more, but. Well, let's talk about the other one that's on all of our lists. I think, we're talking about Westerns. We're kind of coming full circle here. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but 1992. I think it's on all of our lists, Unforgiven.
Yeah.
I'll just pass it to you guys. Tell me a little bit about why you love this film.
Well, I mean, my dad was instrumental in Unforgiven, because I remember him telling me, I think I'd shared this in our 90s video.
Did I tell you?
Yeah, you said, you're like, in most Westerns, when people are killed, it's, it's sort of like fun. Like in the 90s film, I contrasted it with Tombstone, where there's a scene in Tombstone, which is an awesome film, but they're riding along, picking off guys and counting how many they can kill. And it's it's jovial, it's a jaunt, everyone that dies in Unforgiven, it is brutal and horrible. And the violence is heartrending. And I think also you can just feel Eastwood starting to pry apart his own legacy, his own persona, his legacy of violence, and also just what all that was about. It's like an anti-Western Western. It's absolutely freaking awesome. And Gene Hackman is unbelievable as the villain in it. Morgan Freeman is awesome. Yeah, Bill Daggett. Morgan Freeman is awesome in it. The scene with the kid is awesome. But yeah, it started. That movie started. I watched that because of a recommendation from this guy over here who told me about it. He's like, every death, you got to take this seriously, because that's how it's.
Gotta watch it.
That's how it's played,
yeah.
and he's right. That's how it goes. So.
Yeah, it's also, I think, he's a really bad guy, it turns out. Morgan Freeman's his buddy, and he's got this kid along.
Oh, right.
He's trying to become a bad guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Turns out either one of them make it to the bad guy status. Really.
Right.
They don't get to where he's Bill Mooney or whatever he is.
Yeah.
It's kind of, and particularly Freeman, he kind of says, "No, I got to leave this." But they are correcting a really bad wrong. What happened to that woman,
Right.
prostitute?
Right.
So, in some sense, it's somewhat of a story of redemption, a little bit of a redemption, because he was really not a good guy, and then he married this woman who sort of brought him to God or something, started to reform him. But you can see there's still a little bit of that,
right?
That tough guy, which he basically needed in this movie.
Yeah,
but it's kind of a little bit of a story of redemption. I actually feel the same way about Gran Torino. That's why I like Gran Torino.
Yeah, they're very similar.
He's not the best guy in that movie either, But in this movie, he really is a bad guy. Because they go, oh, that guy who's writing the story about him, remember that? Oh, and Richard Harris is in that movie. He's great.
Yeah, he's great too.
He's great in it. That movie is just.
Yes, Richard Harris. Yeah,
Richard Harris is great.
What's his name?
English Bob. Yeah.
I feel kind of bad for him.
He does.
He got the Tuco treatment there on the prisoner work camp.
Sitting on the ground.
Yeah.
You do.
That gets, yeah.
But I mean, just like, I don't know.
But it's, I love this movie. It's one of the best Westerns ever made, I think. Eastwood went on a record saying it will be the last Western ever made. I don't know if Cry Macho is a Western or not, but I love it because he's not above critiquing the personas of the past or the very genre, right? Like, I have a complicated relationship with Westerns now, like I do with war movies, and I love movies like this because they're almost a deconstruction of and a critique of the violence of Westerns, and it's almost really a glimpse into how violence will ultimately implode upon itself. And You see the Richard Harris character, right? I mean, comes back to bite you. And I think Eastwood has done a great service in this movie. I think maybe the highest praise is that I was reading that this film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress, as being deemed culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. So that's pretty high praise. That's a short list of films. Yeah, and again, well deserved. Won a ton of awards.
What's
and the effect it has on other characters too.
Right.
Exactly. The shootings have an effect on
everybody.
Yeah, Freeman, he's been through this.
Right.
The kid.
Yeah. And the kid's got this glorified, like when we were kids watching this, going to the movie theater, right? Maybe we have similar visions of grandeur of this, and it's a rude awakening for him, that the gravitas of violence and taking another man's life.
Really hard.
I think that's the best. That's the best scene in the whole film.
It's a hell of a thing, killing a man. You take away all he's got, and all he's ever gonna have.
He's like,
oh yeah, for sure.
And
his very life.
And Freeman won't participate. He says, "I can't do this." Yeah. And then the other kid want to watch their kid. Their kid's watching this other kid.
Right.
And he's just a kid. Seriously, I don't know how old. He's not very old, but anyway. Yeah. It's just that scene is like, I can hardly watch that scene.
It'd be really hard to nitpick this movie. It's pretty much flawless.
It's really.
Yeah, it is. I think.
It's really.
Yeah.
I had it 1 for confession.
Yeah, I mean it and the good, the bad, and the ugly are 1A, 1B. Yeah. I mean, this one better crafted, but there's the nostalgia piece for the other one. I think they're good companion pieces for sure. Yeah. Good.
Gran Torino is essential because he starts to pull apart the mythos, but he can't help himself, and that he goes back into it to take out. Because I guess like Dad said, he kind of needs to at the end, because he's almost got to take him out with violence. But in Torino, he takes out violence without.
Exactly. He completes the cycle.
The cycle is complete.
Yeah. They actually kind of go together.
Well, they're absolutely companion pieces.
That's like why.
This one is phenomenally acted, phenomenally.
Maybe I should put that on the list instead of Kelly's Hero.
But I know the problem with Torino is one shot Clint, and
the
non-professional actor. It's just not. It's a phenomenal ending and a phenomenal themes inside of it. Is less than terrific at times. But if you love Eastwood,
that's true.
Yeah. We need our guilty pleasure, Kelly's Hero, Firefox, though, once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Nice. Guys, this has been awesome. One more thing. Let's end on a little fun note here before we wish everyone a Happy New Year. If you could have one piece of memorabilia from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, what would it be and why? Free of charge. What would you choose?
Okay, so we get one thing to take from the movie.
You get one thing to take from the movie.
This is
toughest question of the day, I know.
What do you think?
Well, I was thinking that the gravestone that'd be hard.
Unknown.
Welcome to Art Stanton, yeah.
Maybe one of the posters. No.
I kind of want his thing, the thing that
poncho.
The thing that hides the gun. That's pretty dope, man.
That would be iconic for sure.
Poncho's good.
Because
it's a good one.
Whenever he does this, it's killing time. Like it's time.
Yeah.
Now I'm ready. So that's probably my thing.
Maybe one of the
nice.
Oh yeah,
the rope. Just have a rope hanging in your basement. Yeah. I was thinking maybe for my wife, that little pink parasol Tuco has in the desert. A little Valentine's gift for the wife, yeah. Or the hat, Eastwood's hat, because that hat has gone through all 3 films, right? That's the same hat that gets shot up in a previous film with Van Cleef, I think.
That's really good poncho. I like that. Which one? What did Tuco?
Or maybe just you don't need a hat, Dave. You got a good-looking hat on right now. So.
What did Tuco wear? Did he wear it?
We had a big sombrero too. That's another good one. Yeah.
I was thinking sombrero. Yeah. Something he wore would be good.
What about the closed sign that he puts in the dude's mouth when he's getting the gun? Closed. That's another good scene we didn't talk about too. Where he's cartridges. How much? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's a really good scene.
He's just coming out of the desert there, right? He's choosing his gun, his customized gun. Yeah.
Oh right, yes.
And that poor guy is telling him like, "How much is this? 25. How much? 50."
No. How much? Yeah. Yeah.
Gives him $200.
He doesn't know that. He doesn't realize the guy's trying to tell him how much money.
That's not a good job to have back then, right? The guy selling guns. He's got to get robbed weekly. Just some old guy on his own. No security system back then. Yeah.
You need like a Gatling gun in there to protect yourself.
Yeah. No kidding. Good. Well, gents, we better land this Firefox plane somewhere. So it's been fun. This has been great. Dave, thank you so much. I do hope I'll get down to Pennsylvania. Maybe we can watch an Eastwood film together in person. That would be incredible. So we'll put that on the list once the world calms down a bit. So thanks. You got a couple Eastwood films we need to watch together that Nick hasn't seen there. So maybe pull out Kelly's Heroes or Firefox. And thanks to those listening who made it through. Hope you guys have a great 2022. Happy New Year to everyone. And I hope it's more of a good year than a bad or ugly year. So thanks, guys. Take care. And maybe we'll do it again down the road.
Take care.